Nicole, born on July 4, 1980 in Erkelenz, Germany, had a complex family background. Raised by her mother, Angelika Tegtmeier, it was later revealed that Nicole was the result of an extramarital affair. However, a paternity test confirmed that a married man from their village was her biological father. Unfortunately, Nicole never had the opportunity to develop a relationship with him. A few months after her birth, Angelika met musician Ad van den Hurk, and they eventually got married and moved to Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Ad also had a son named Andy from a previous marriage, and together they formed a blended family. However, their marriage did not last long due to Angelika's severe mental health issues. She often isolated herself and battled with depression. In 1989, Angelika and Ad divorced when Nicole was 8 years old. Ad sought primary custody of Nicole, claiming that Angelika was unfit to raise their daughter. He was granted full custody and raised both Nicole and Andy. As a musician, Ad frequently traveled, which meant that Nicole and Andy spent most of their time with their grandmother. Despite Angelika's mental health struggles, she and Nicole did not have a typical mother-daughter relationship. Eventually, Ad met another musician named Jolanda, whom he married. Jolanda integrated well into the family, and they continued their musical careers together. However, their busy touring schedule meant that Nicole and Andy were primarily raised by their grandmother in Eindhoven. Nicole had a strong bond with her grandmother and didn't mind this arrangement. Tragedy struck Nicole's life after Ad remarried, and when Angelika, who still harbored feelings for him, succumbed to her depression and took her own life in April 1995. This devastating loss shattered Nicole, as she had hoped to mend her relationship with her mother. However, Nicole's family and friends intervened and prevented her from falling into a state of depression that could have led her down a dangerous path, similar to her mother. Ad made it a priority to provide comfort and support to Nicole, while her friends also stepped in to form a much-needed support system. Eventually, Nicole focused her mind and secured a job at a bakery in Wanstel, keeping herself occupied and preventing intrusive thoughts from taking over. Her loved ones described her as a trustworthy, responsible individual with admirable qualities. However, on October 6, 1995, these very traits raised concerns. Nicole left her grandmother's house early in the morning and rode her bike to work, a routine she never deviated from without a valid reason. When she failed to show up for work, her manager and the bakery owner contacted the police to report her disappearance. The police then reached out to her grandmother and father, who confirmed that Nicole had left for work as usual. A thorough search was initiated, with the police questioning people in the area and scouring the surroundings for any sign of Nicole or her bike. It wasn't until later that evening that Nicole's bicycle was discovered along the bank of the Dommel River, but there was no trace of Nicole or her belongings. As investigators delved into Nicole's background, they considered the possibility that she had run away, a behavior sometimes exhibited by teenagers. However, her father, Ad, dismissed this notion, stating that Nicole had not shown any signs of rebellion or a desire to leave. The search persisted, and on October 19, 1995, Nicole's backpack was found near the Eindhoven Canal. The investigators received numerous tips, amounting to almost 300 leads. Then, on October 24, 1995, a man contacted the police station, claiming to have information about the person responsible for Nicole's murder. The call abruptly ended before it could be traced, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. This completely changed the direction of the investigation. The police began interviewing Nicole's friends and family extensively, meticulously examining all the evidence in hopes of finding a breakthrough in the case. Jolanda, Nicole's stepmother, reportedly reached out to psychics out of frustration over Nicole's disappearance, adding to the complexity of the situation. They were advised to focus their search on 2 specific canals with the assistance of search and rescue police dogs. Investigators thoroughly searched the areas where Nicole might have potentially gone, but unfortunately, there was no sign of her. However, everything changed on November 22, 1995. A hiker passing through the woods between Mierlo and Lirop stumbled upon human remains. He quickly alerted the local authorities in the nearby town. The police arrived at the scene and already had suspicions about the identity of the remains. Through forensic testing, the remains were confirmed to be those of Nicole van den Hurk, bringing the search to a tragic end. An autopsy revealed that Nicole had suffered multiple injuries, including fractures to her jaw, head injuries, and injuries to her fingers. She had also been sexually assaulted and fatally stabbed with a small knife, which caused a broken rib and internal bleeding leading to her death. The news that there was no evidence to identify her killer devastated her family even further. Nicole's funeral, held on November 28, 1995, was attended by a large number of mourners who wanted to pay their final respects to the beautiful blonde teenager. However, this was just the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards justice. Although Nicole's boyfriend at the time was interviewed, his identity and photo were not released due to his status as a minor. He was eventually cleared of any involvement in her murder due to the lack of evidence. In January 1996, the police took a different approach by broadcasting the anonymous man's phone call on national television, hoping that someone would recognize the voice and come forward. Regrettably, this strategy did not yield any results. The situation was becoming dire until authorities stumbled upon a new lead. A friend of the van der Hurk family, Celine Hartogs, was apprehended in Miami in February 1996 for drug trafficking. During her interrogation, she implicated the men she had been associated with in Nicole's alleged murder. She claimed that due to her knowledge of the crime, she was coerced into becoming a drug courier to safeguard her own life. Initially, Ad believed her and supported her assertions. However, as time passed, her narratives became increasingly fanciful. Upon further questioning, the police were able to unravel her fabrications and expose the flaws in her story. It was revealed that she had concocted the tale in an attempt to reduce her own prison sentence. Ad distanced himself from her account and continued his quest for answers in Nicole's demise. Both Ad and Andy were brought in for questioning between May and June 1996 regarding Nicole's murder, causing a stir in the small town. Despite the shock of investigating family members, the community remained steadfast in their belief that neither man could be involved. Following extensive interrogations, both Ad and Andy were cleared and released due to the lack of evidence linking them to the crime. Despite the increasing reward for information on Nicole's murder, no substantial leads materialized. The case grew colder as the years passed, with fewer investigators dedicated to solving it. In 2004, a new team of cold case detectives revisited the investigation, but once again, their efforts did not yield any breakthroughs. Nicole's death remained a mystery, gathering dust as time went by without any new developments. The family continued to grapple with the aftermath of Nicole's tragic passing, particularly impacting Andy, who shared a close bond with his stepsister despite being only 5 years her senior. After experiencing the tragic losses of Angelica and Nicole, he began to face psychological challenges. He turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism and battled with depression. Since Nicole's murder, he had distanced himself from his family and eventually decided to move to England in order to escape the painful reminders and memories associated with Nicole and the tragedy they endured. Meanwhile, Ad remained in the Netherlands, focusing on his music career and hoping for a miracle that would bring justice to Nicole's murder. However, Ad and Yolanda eventually separated and went their separate ways. Ad relocated to Spain, but maintained contact with Andy through phone calls. Unfortunately, the emotional toll of Nicole's untimely demise strained their relationship over time. The situation reached a boiling point on March 8, 2011, when Andy made a shocking announcement on Facebook, confessing to the murder of his sister and stating that he would be arrested. This post quickly gained attention and was shared numerous times. British police promptly arrested Andy, and he repeated his confession while in custody. As a result, Andy was extradited back to the Netherlands to face trial for Nicole's murder. Upon his return, Andy was detained in jail and denied contact with anyone, including his family. This unexpected turn of events added a significant twist to the case, but the challenge was that there was no evidence beyond the confession made on Facebook. The police interviewed Ad regarding his son's confession, and surprisingly, Ad did not believe that Andy was telling the truth. He suspected that Andy was merely seeking attention following the media frenzy surrounding Nicole's case. Yolanda was also interviewed after this unexpected development, but she had little to contribute in terms of evidence. She believed that there must be an underlying motive behind Andy's heinous crime, as she couldn't fathom why he would commit such an act without any apparent reason. However, this initial shocking statement was just the beginning of Andy's revelations. Shortly after, he was released from custody due to lack of evidence. Andy proceeded to make another incriminating claim, stating that he did not actually kill his sister, but wanted to draw attention back to her case after all these years. It was at this point that he dropped another bombshell, confessing that he had been burdened by a secret that was eating away at him. According to Andy, he knew the identity of Nicole's killer, his own father, Ad. Andy went on to make serious allegations against Ad, accusing him of raping Nicole and impregnating her. In an attempt to conceal his crimes, Andy claimed that Ad and he then conspired to murder her in order to keep the truth hidden. Ad, taken aback by these accusations, vehemently denied any involvement in Nicole's murder. He professed his love for Nicole, treating her as his own daughter, and insisted that he never wished her any harm. These shocking allegations, combined with the fact that both Ad and Andy had been considered persons of interest during the investigation, prompted authorities to exhume Nicole's body for further DNA testing. On September 9, 2011, her remains were exhumed and sent to the Netherlands Forensic Institute for analysis. Andy's confessions had created a whirlwind of doubt, compelling investigators to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of the truth. During the examination, 3 distinct DNA profiles were extracted from a single trace of sperm. As a result, the case was reopened in late 2012, with forensic specialists from New Zealand's Institute of Environmental Science and Research in Auckland being called upon for assistance. With their expertise, the different DNA samples found on Nicole's body were separated and tested. A mathematical and statistical approach was then employed to determine the most prominent DNA profile and establish a true positive match. The 3 DNA samples were identified as male, and now it was up to Dutch investigators to go back and test the results against those of the suspects, which included Ad and Andy. One of the samples belonged to Nicole's then boyfriend, who was ruled out due to a solid alibi from previous interviews. The second profile was allegedly unknown. However, in some reports, it was said to be Andy's. Police never confirmed those reports. The third profile yielded some interesting results. On January 14, 2014, 46-year-old Jos de G was arrested at his home in Helmond, a city in Eindhoven. Finding his DNA on Nicole could have meant anything, but police were not giving up so easily. After a lengthy interrogation, investigators learned from de G that on the day of Nicole's disappearance, he'd had an argument with a girlfriend before storming out of the house. Investigators placed the clues together and believed that de G may have seen Nicole on her way to work, and in that moment of anger unleashed his frustration on the young woman. These may have just been a theory, but DG did have a history. DG was previously convicted of 3 sexually motivated crimes. The first incident involved a 20-year-old woman who was violently raped after DG grabbed her off her bicycle and took her to a remote area to carry out the crime. This scenario was similar to Nicole's in every way apart from the stabbing. The second 2 incidents involved an ex-girlfriend who he sexually abused in her own home. It was also noted that DG suffered from mental health problems and had been institutionalized and received psychiatric treatment. The discovery of the new suspect meant that Andy had been playing a very dangerous game. After DeG's name was added to the investigation, and he confessed that the entire Facebook post and accusations leveled against his father were a publicity stunt to reopen the investigation. Since Nicole's death, Andy had been developing a plan and making inquiries about DNA testing and exhumation. Over the years, he had approached the police multiple times, seeking their assistance in exhuming and retesting the DNA evidence he believed would be present on Nicole's body. With advancements in technology since her tragic murder in 1995, he felt it was the right time to take action. Despite the risk of damaging his own reputation, he was determined to seek justice for his beloved sister. Andy understood the bureaucratic obstacles surrounding exhumation policies and knew he had to provide a compelling reason for investigators to retest the evidence. His gamble paid off, and he was hailed as a hero for his bravery. However, the aftermath of these events strained his relationship with his father, Ad, who found it difficult to forget the shock. Nevertheless, their efforts led to the trial of the man they believed to be Nicole's killer. The trial began in April 2014 and unfolded with unexpected twists. DeG's lawyer disputed the DNA evidence, suggesting that other male profiles found on Nicole's exhumed body could belong to the real culprit. The defense argued that Nicole and DeG may have had a consensual relationship, highlighting her multiple sexual partners and the possibility of her being pregnant at the time of her death. The prosecution countered these claims, asserting that Nicole was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. They acknowledged that there was no clear motive for her murder other than being a victim of opportunity, allowing DeG to unleash his pent-up anger. The defense remained steadfast in their belief that the other DNA profiles belonged to the true perpetrator. DeG's trial for manslaughter and rape charges commenced on November 2, 2015. The prosecution presented 2 witnesses who claimed to have confessed to the crime. However, the defense team of DG put forth the argument that the witnesses, who had been institutionalized alongside DG at the time, were merely confessing in order to take advantage of the €15,000 reward that was being offered for additional information. Additionally, the defense emphasized that the DNA evidence had been poorly stored and advocated for the reanalysis of the samples. Despite the prosecution's claim that this was a delay tactic, the court agreed to conduct the tests once again, this time by a new team of forensic experts. As a result, the trial was postponed until the following year. In April 2016, the new forensics team presented their findings, which confirmed that DG was the most likely suspect. Consequently, on October 12, 2016, the trial resumed with the introduction of this new evidence. Undoubtedly, this was an extremely distressing process for the family involved. The prosecution argued that DG should be sentenced to 14 years in prison for the manslaughter and rape of Nicole, as it was highly improbable that a consensual relationship could have existed between DG and Nicole, given his background. They asserted that Nicole would not have willingly entered into a relationship with him. After careful consideration, and considering the fact that 2 separate DNA tests conducted by different teams pointed to DG as the most likely suspect, DeG's acquittal was overturned on October 9, 2018, and he was sentenced to 12 years for the rape and manslaughter of Nicole. Following the conviction, life gradually returned to normal for the Van den Herk family. Both Andy and Ad were proven innocent through DNA results, providing them with a sense of relief. Andy returned to England and attempted to live the remainder of his life as normally as possible. However, in May 2022, another tragic event unfolded. Andy's neighbors began to notice his absence and became concerned, prompting them to request a welfare check by the police. Upon arrival, the police knocked on Andy's door but received no response, ultimately leading them to forcibly enter his apartment. They were met with a putrid odor and proceeded to search the bedroom, where they discovered Andy's lifeless body on his bed. Numerous bottles of alcohol and prescription drugs were found near him. It has been established subsequently that Andy took his own life, as confirmed by toxicology reports, which revealed an excessive consumption of alcohol and drugs leading to a fatal heart attack. Investigators concluded that the immense pressure resulting from Nicole's murder and the subsequent pursuit of justice overwhelmed Andy, making it difficult for him to cope with the harsh reality. Considering his previous battles with mental health issues, it is believed that his depression ultimately took its toll on him. David Till, born on August 21, 1958, and Brian Ogden, born on January 16, 1958, formed an unbreakable bond during their childhood in Detroit, Michigan. Their paths first crossed as Boy Scouts, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. As they grew older, their friendship only grew stronger as they shared countless experiences together, such as card games, hunting trips, and outdoor escapades. In 1985, at the age of 27, both David and Brian embarked on a life-changing journey. On November 22, 1985, David and Brian set off towards David's family hunting cabin in White Cloud, Michigan, with the intention of going deer hunting. Starting from Brian's home in St. Cloud Shores, David picked him up after Brian cashed a $50 check. Their initial plan was to visit a friend in Mio, located 150 miles to the east, before heading to the hunting grounds near David's family cabin. However, fate had a different plan in store for them. Unfortunately, they never reached their friend's house or the hunting cabin. Their disappearance remained a baffling mystery, as authorities could find no logical reason for them to vanish willingly. Although there was no concrete evidence that David and Brian arrived at the hunting cabin in White Cloud that night, several witnesses reported seeing them and their Bronco at a tavern in Mio. This suggested that an incident may have taken place there. Despite extensive searches in the woods, no trace of the men, their vehicle, or any indication of an accident or getting lost was found. Both David and Brian were Caucasian, with David working as a skilled machinist and Brian as a mechanic. Their absence from their homes on Sunday night and failure to show up for work on Monday, November 25, 1985, caused great concern among their families, as they were known for their dependability. In the days and weeks that followed, their families took proactive steps, engaging with the media and law enforcement agencies, distributing flyers showcasing David and Brian's images, along with David's Bronco. They even enlisted TV stations to broadcast descriptions of both men statewide. David was depicted as having brown hair, green eyes, and a beard, while Brian sported sandy brown hair, brown eyes, and a mustache. With their details widely disseminated, David and Brian became the focus of numerous false sightings, particularly in the White Cloud area. However, David's father, along with other relatives at the cabin, knew they had not reached their intended destination. A man living northwest of Mio confirmed seeing David and Brian, who were seeking directions to a friend's residence near Luzerne on Friday, November 22, 1985. Despite this lead, when detectives contacted the friend, he stated that David and Brian never made it to his place. The friend even underwent a lie detector test to verify his credibility, which he successfully passed. Further inquiries revealed sightings of David and Brian in bars and eateries across Mio during the weekend they disappeared. Nevertheless, authorities could not determine where they spent their nights or pinpoint the exact timing of their disappearance, whether it happened on Saturday or Sunday night. With no clues leading to David or Brian and no evidence of foul play, the investigation into their enigmatic disappearance gradually lost momentum over the years, eventually going cold. However, in 1990, investigators received a crucial tip from an informant regarding the night David and Brian vanished. According to the informant, the two close friends had visited Linker's Lounge near Mio, where they consumed copious amounts of alcohol and eventually got into a physical altercation with another group, which included two brothers, Junior Raymond Duval, also known as Junior, and Donald Duval, also known as Coco. The remark was made, "One should witness the expression on someone's face when we did the other one," and they had mentioned that they fed them to the pigs. Despite this lead, authorities lacked sufficient evidence to proceed until 1999, when Detective Lesneski uncovered a crucial witness, Barbara Boudreau, who had been harboring a secret for an extended period. In early 1999, Barbara and her friend, Ruth Fawcett, were enjoying some drinks. As they laughed and discussed their lives, Barbara decided to confide in Ruth. She disclosed that she had witnessed what happened to David and Brian all those years ago in 1985. Ruth was taken aback and immediately urged Barbara to inform the police. However, Barbara expressed reluctance to cooperate due to concerns for her safety. Recognizing the importance of Barbara's information, Ruth took it upon herself to alert the investigators, including Detective Lesneski. Although Ruth couldn't provide Barbara's exact address, she provided a general location to the authorities. Armed with this information, Detective Lesneski conducted a thorough search, eventually finding Barbara's secluded residence in the woods on March 5, 1999. Despite the passage of more than 13 years since the disappearance of the two men, Lesneski's determination led him to be the first person to locate and question Barbara. Upon realizing the purpose of Lesneski's visit, Barbara was overwhelmed with fear and began trembling intensely, causing Detective Lesneski to worry she might be having an epileptic seizure. In a state of panic, she repeatedly screamed at Detective Lesneski, demanding that he leave or else she would be killed. Barbara even tried to slam the door shut, but Lesneski swiftly blocked it with his foot and calmly entered while offering words of reassurance. Despite her ongoing trembling and tears, Barbara continued to express the same fear repeatedly, that Lesneski's presence would endanger her life and that he needed to leave her residence. He implored her for assistance, assuring her that he would dedicate the rest of his life to solving the murders. Although Barbara sensed his genuine sincerity, she initially only revealed the events that occurred at the bar and mentioned hearing screams later that night near her house in the woods. Lesneski detected that Barbara was withholding vital information and understood that he needed to earn her trust in order to obtain the complete story from her. Over the course of nearly 2.5 years, he diligently worked to build her trust through various acts of aid, such as repairing her roof, chopping firewood, and fixing a fence. It wasn't until 2003 that Barbara finally agreed to sit down for a comprehensive interrogation. During this session, she paused, turned off Lesneski's tape recorder, and confessed, "You know I was there, don't you? You know I witnessed everything." She then proceeded to recount the horrifying details of David and Brian's tragic fate, which she had witnessed alongside a friend who was no longer present. "When I went to the Attorney General, I swore to tell the truth, which I did to some extent, until near the end when I said, 'You know, I can never reveal the whole truth,' and they stopped the recording." She recalled the time she spent at Linker's Lounge on that fateful night when David and Brian disappeared. She remembered being in the company of her friend, Ronnie Emery, and the two of them were playing pool and enjoying drinks. They were there to celebrate Ronnie's first successful hunt. Amidst the celebratory atmosphere, Barbara noticed two intoxicated men causing a disturbance in the lounge. It turned out to be David and Brian, who were engaged in a heated argument with other patrons. Shortly after, Donald and Raymond Duvall entered the establishment, accompanied by another individual, and tensions escalated. Following a confrontation with David and Brian, there was an unpleasant exchange of words and actions. Sensing that the situation was on the verge of spiraling out of control, Barbara intervened and threatened to involve law enforcement. Things appeared to settle into a state of tranquility, albeit briefly. However, it was merely a fleeting respite. Barbara and Ronnie, recognizing the need to depart, made the decision to return to her nearby abode. Little did they know that their evening would take a sinister turn as disconcerting sounds emanated from the woods adjacent to her dwelling. The night air carried the echoes of screams, shouts, and the chilling metallic reverberations that pierced through the darkness. Intrigued yet apprehensive, Barbara and Ronnie stealthily slipped out through the rear entrance, careful not to attract any unwanted attention, and embarked on a journey into the enigmatic woods. Their path through the snow-covered terrain led them to a haunting spectacle. A congregation of men gathered in a clearing, their countenances illuminated by the gentle radiance of the moon and the harsh glare of truck lights. Amidst this assembly, Raymond and Donald Duvall found themselves embroiled in a fervent exchange, their voices carrying across the field in the stillness of the night. During her testimony, Barbara recounted a traumatic scene where the two men restrained Brian while others callously assaulted David. The haunting sound of those metallic pings, reminiscent of an aluminum bat striking a softball, resonated in Barbara's ears. Donald Duvall, armed with an aluminum baseball bat, unleashed a relentless onslaught of savage blows upon David, who pleaded desperately for mercy. Amidst David's anguished cries and futile attempts to evade the merciless swings, the sickening thud of the bat striking his skull reverberated through the air, akin to the shattering of a pumpkin upon unyielding concrete. As the violence unfolded, Brian managed to momentarily break free, only to be ruthlessly apprehended and dragged back to the field by his assailants, who taunted him mercilessly for his terror-induced loss of control. They subjected him to an unrelenting barrage of kicks, blows, and strikes until his resistance waned and he succumbed to their heartless onslaught. With both victims incapacitated, their attackers, Raymond and Donald Duvall, heartlessly loaded their lifeless bodies into a vehicle, causing Ronnie and Barbara to flee in terror back to her residence. Their escape, however, did not shield them from the ominous threat that soon followed. A mysterious visitor, unknown to Barbara, arrived at her door and delivered a chilling warning that would leave her scared for the rest of her life. The man said, "You didn't see anything, and you don't know anything. If you ever open your mouth, you'll be killed. Pigs gotta eat too." In the years that followed, the Duvalls occasionally stopped by Barbara's house to repeat their threats and make sure that she remained silent. Their visits grew more frequent whenever the investigation heated up. Living in constant fear for the next 18 years, Barbara harbored her secrets and revealed them only to a select few, including Smith, a sheriff's deputy with whom she had shared a romantic relationship in the past. Despite her attempts to seek solace and validation, Smith treated Barbara's revelations with skepticism and dismissal, leaving her isolated and vulnerable. However, with the truth finally laid out, Barbara felt as if a huge burden had been lifted off her chest. Now that Barbara's long-held silence was shattered, there was a chance that the perpetrators would be brought to justice, offering a glimmer of closure amidst the shadows of the past. After Barbara's confession, numerous witnesses stepped forward, each adding another layer of horror to the tragic tale of David and Brian's demise. According to these accounts, Raymond and Donald Duvall were not only responsible for the merciless murders, but also callously bragged about their grisly actions. Some witnesses spoke of chilling conversations where the Duvall brothers boasted about dismembering the victims and disposing of their bodies by feeding them to pigs. Others recounted verbal threats made by Raymond, warning of similar fates for those who dared to speak out against them. Raymond's son's girlfriend, who served as a witness, recounted a deeply unsettling encounter where Raymond not only admitted to the killings, but also made threats against her safety. Similarly, during their relationship, Donald's girlfriend revealed horrifying confessions made in fits of rage, accompanied by acts of violence and manipulation to ensure her silence. Furthermore, multiple witnesses recalled seeing Rex, another brother in the Duvall family, driving David's Bronco in the days following the murders, adding another layer of suspicion to the already sinister narrative. These testimonies painted a bleak picture of the Duvall brothers, illustrating a history tainted by a wide range of criminal activities, from poaching to murder. This further emphasized the profound darkness that lurked within their family. Another Duvall brother admitted that while he did not personally commit the killings, he assisted in transporting the victims' bodies. Additionally, suspicions arose regarding Kenny, another member of the Duvall family, who allegedly dismantled David's Bronco and sold its parts for profit. Kenny's involvement was detailed in a recorded interview with law enforcement, but conveniently, during his court testimony, he seemed to suffer from selective memory loss. Raymond and Donald were charged and arrested in 2003, facing trial for the murders of David and Brian in October of the same year. Despite their claims of innocence and denial of any connection to the victims, the weight of evidence, including Barbara's testimony and statements from 6 other witnesses, proved decisive. Consequently, the Duval brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In January 2004, a poignant memorial service took place at St. Raymond's Church in Detroit, honoring the memories of both David and Brian. This service provided solace and closure to the grieving loved ones and members of the community alike. Regrettably, the bodies of both David and Brian have yet to be found, along with their personal possessions such as wallets, identification papers, luggage, and David's 1980 Ford Bronco. Barbara's revelations also indicate the participation of at least 3 more individuals in the attack on the victims, although no additional individuals implicated in the case have faced any charges thus far.